YB powered Mk2 Escort RS2000. Tattiest looking bit, an old banger drift Mk2 Escort.
The bush was stuck in place. Apologies to the OCDers.
We are now deep into March 2025, which means it's time to take a closer look at March's entry in the official 2025 MH calendar, which is Lee's YB powered Mk2 Escort RS2000. Huge shout out to Lee if you're watching, and I really hope that I'm pronouncing your name right by calling you Lee, but either way, Lee has been in touch with some more details and pictures about his RS2000, so let's have a closer look. Alright, so as it happens, Lee owns a breaker's yard, and when he was out collecting a scrap motor, he saw the rear end of the RS hanging out of a council garage and managed to sort a deal out for it. Lee mentions that when the car was new, it was actually bought by a doctor local to him. Lee mentions that he's changed everything mechanical since he's owned the car, including fitting the Joe Hart 240 horsepower naturally aspirated Cosy lump. Hanging off the back of that is an uprated Type 9 gearbox, and power is sent to the rear wheels via a 3J Next Gen LSD with big half shafts. Brakes wise, it has APs on the front and Sierra Cosworth calipers on the rear. The car has Group 1 Bilstein front suspension with a quick rack, and the car also has a full Simpson exhaust system. Lee mentions that the idea behind this build was to make it look like a sleeper on the outside, and engine wise for him it just had to be a naturally aspirated Cosy lump. He says he absolutely loves the noise of the Cosy lump. I'm not surprised with it running through those side draft Webbers, but Lee admits the only problem with the car is stopping it. Now Lee sent a ton of pictures over, including this picture here where I assume the RS is sitting in his own breaker's yard, and it seems that the RS has had its own feature in Classic Ford magazine as well. In fact, it was on the front cover of that magazine. Here's the RS with some sort of fighter plane in the background. Now that's a really cool picture, and we've got a nice close-up of that Cosy YB rocker cover with Heart Power written on it. From this picture we can see that the RS's interior is absolutely pristine, and as Lee said, this thing is a real sleeper. Loving the 3-spoke RS steering wheel and those mint Recaros, and yeah, the cockpit really is just how it would have been from the factory. Here's another really cool shot coming from the engine bay, which, judging by the background, I think that's in Blackpool, I might be wrong. And check out this really arty black and white picture. A really cool way to photograph a black and white RS. Now my thoughts about Lee's RS is, I think he's got it just right. He wanted a sleeper, but he wanted a bit more poke than what a Pinto lump is able to achieve, and I think an NA Cosy is perfect. After all, they are based on a Pinto lump, so hopefully the anoraks could also forgive him for putting the Cosy lump in, although everyone knows that I'm quite happy to upset the anoraks if it means that someone's building the car the way that they want to. Alright, round to Heidi's garage, and I think it's about time that I got this thing back together and got it back on all 4 wheels. Of course, I need to do that so that I can continue getting her and all the rest of my stuff in these garages ready for the big move, which will be happening very soon, where I'm going to be taking everything to a garage closer to home. But because of the order that I've been doing things in terms of getting some of the bits ready that I need to fit back to Heidi to get her rolling, it means that I'm actually able to put Heidi together with regards to her rear axle and stuff with the parts that are going to be staying on her long term. And I've brought a ton of parts round with me today, including a load that I've recently been freshening up at home. I've got a box full of bits here. I'm pretty sure all of these bits won't be fitted yet. I've wrapped them up, there's door handles in there and stuff like that, bits that I painted at home recently, and these will just be tucked away and they'll be fitted to the car later on. I've got this restored pedal box over here, which I need to fit to Heidi so that I can remove the other restored one that's currently fitted to her and sell that. But yeah, got some other bits down here that are all part of her rear end. But I think I'm going to focus on fitting the bits that I need to just to get her rolling, and then I can bring her out the garage, jack her rear end up while she's out here, and it'll give me more room to fit some of the other bits to her rear end, because trying to do stuff inside the garage is a nightmare. So essentially I just need to chuck the leaf springs on with the rear axle and get some wheels on her, of course, and then she'll be rollable. The rear axle has already had the half shafts fitted. It now has 2 half shafts that aren't snapped. These aren't going to be staying long term though. I do have an uprated set to go on, and in fact only one of these had wheel studs, so I've had to bang 2 out and put them in the other one, so we've got 2 wheel studs on each one. I also haven't pressed these fully into the axle yet, because once this thing comes out the garage I'm going to need to pull these half shafts back out again, so I don't want to struggle doing that. I have hooked up the flexi hose to the rear axle though. This is the one that I recently removed from Maud. Some would say you shouldn't really reuse flexi hoses, but you know, this one's in good nick and it's a aftermarket braided type one, so that'll be absolutely fine. And then over here I've got some more blingy bits that I recently restored at home. I've got the decambered single leaf springs that I recently removed from Maud. These alone will lower the car by 2 inches, but I'm going to throw in these 1-inch blocks. Maud actually had 1/2-inch blocks fitted, but because Maud didn't have wide arches like Heidi does, it means I should be able to go lower on the rear end of Heidi, get a better stance without any risk of rubbing. And I've actually been digging out some rubber grommets to help me locate these properly, because yeah, the hole in these is bigger than the hole in the other lowering blocks. The other lowering blocks were like a tight fit on this Allen key bolt here, but these aren't. So my thoughts are that if I use one of these, which is a kind of tight fit in there, it will help me locate these on the leaf springs and make sure everything's central. The fact that this is a bit too deep, maybe I'll end up chucking these in and then these like that, and then yeah, they'll sit on something like that, and you know, they don't move about as much, whereas without these on, these are able to move around and it'll be harder to centralise. And then on the top, I'm going to do a similar thing. Got these things here, which are roughly tight fit on there, and these should be a tight fit under here. I think you can see that. So yeah, all these rubber bits will help me locate the lowering blocks. I've got brand new U-bolts over here. These will need to be cut down, of course. I've got the freshly painted base plates over here, and in this box I've got the poly bushes that were already fitted to these leaf springs before I restored them, but these are in brilliant shape. Yeah, these pretty much last forever. And those leaf spring poly bushes, as well as a huge range of other poly bushes, are available on my website at marcushayesuk.com. If you're after any poly bushes, go and check out what we've got. But the ones on the website aren't the only ones that we've got in the MH warehouse, so if you don't see what you need, just drop me an email and we can usually match or beat any prices you can get elsewhere as well. And as well as the leaf spring bushes, in here I've got the poly bushes for the shackles. These go into the chassis legs. So yeah, these are the tattiest looking bits that I'm going to be fitting today. I didn't bother repainting these because they're not in that bad shape, and at the end of the day, they're only underneath an old banger drift Mark II Escort.
I got the poly bushes installed into the leaf springs with help from my rubber persuader. Then I used my big metal persuader to open up the front leaf spring brackets slightly, just because the poly bushes are slightly wider than the original rubber ones. Then it was time to fit the front of the leaf springs to the car, leaving the nuts finger tight at this stage. I'll torque everything up on the car at a later date. Anyway, on with the spring shackles now. One half goes into the leaf spring bush and the other half goes into the top hat bushes, which go into the chassis leg. With the leaf spring lifted up, I could put the 2 halves of the shackle together and refit the nuts, again keeping everything finger tight at this stage. Once I'd repeated the process for the other side, that was both leaf springs installed. It was time to get the axle installed, and once the lowering blocks were in position, I could fasten the axle to the leaf springs with the U-bolts and base plates. And once the wheels were fitted, Heidi was rollable.
Alright, so with Heidi jacked up outside the garage, it's going to be way easier for me to carry on getting this rear end all back together. However, there is one part, or a pair of parts, that I haven't got round here, and that's the bump stops that go on top of the axle here that bang against here and stop the axle bottoming out and travelling too far. So I've got all the bits down here that I'm planning to fit next. We've got the GAZ adjustable rear shock absorbers that came off of Maud when I took her apart, of course. I do need to fit some new bushes in the bottom of them, which I've got here, and these weren't available in the MH warehouse. I had to order these from GAZ direct, but they weren't expensive at all. I've also got some brand new nuts for the top of these shock absorbers, and I've decided to use non-locking nuts, because when you put locking nuts on these and you have to take them apart years down the road, they are an absolute nightmare to remove. So I'm hoping if I do have to dismantle Heidi, having these non-locking nuts should make things a bit easier, and hopefully these spring washers will mean that the nuts won't come undone on their own. And I've got these nice zinc plated washers to go on there to replace the ones that were on there when they were fitted to Maud. But yeah, other than that, I've got the 9-inch rear brakes that came off of Maud, and I want to refit the brake pipes to the rear axle. I need to dig out the smaller one, which does need shortening, but I have got this longer one. Got the handbrake rod, and I'm probably going to fit this handbrake cable that came off of Maud. It is a bit dirty and grubby, but I don't think I have a brand new one of these. And if I've got time, there is some other bits I want to crack on with inside the interior, but for now, let's crack on with completing the job on the rear end.
I've got the GAZ bushes installed with help from my rubber persuader, and then set about installing one of the shocks onto the driver's side. But the bottom of it just wouldn't slide on to the base plate. The angle of this bit looked like it was causing me the problem, so I jacked the body up, which allowed the axle to hang down a bit, which helped a bit but didn't solve the issue completely. I decided to remove the paint from that shaft to give it a bit more clearance, which definitely helped, but it still felt like I was having to put way too much effort in to bang the shock into place. I decided to bang it back off again. The shock came off, but the bush was stuck in place, which was exactly what happened when I removed these shocks from Maud. I got the bush off and decided to do some measuring. The hole in the bush was 13mm exactly, and the width of the pin was 12.7mm, so it should fit. Working on the other shock, I decided to open the bush out slightly, finishing with some sandpaper on the drill bit. This enabled the shock to go on a bit easier, but it still was hard, and I wasn't able to install the nut because that's waiting to go to the platers. Anyway, I pulled the half shaft out so that I could bolt the 9-inch rear brakes on, then I reinstalled the shaft and bolted it in. I repeated the process for the other side, except I wasn't able to fit the shock absorber. The bush is just too damaged. So I moved on to the diff bump stop, then started on the brake lines. Once the big copper pipe was in place, I sorted out the rear flexi hose, then I sorted out the smaller copper pipe and tightened everything up. Then it was on with the handbrake rod. I still need to grab a bush for it from the MH warehouse. I didn't have the correct pin and clip for the end of it, but a locking nut and bolt will do the job. Next up, it was time to install the handbrake cable, and then I got the angle grinder out to cut down those ridiculously long U-bolts. That's much better. And there it is, Heidi's rear axle almost back together properly. Apologies to the OCDers for my really tidy brake lines.
Alright, well, messing around with those rear shock bushes earlier has killed my time today. I am going to run out of time soon. It's getting cold, and yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to run out of daylight very soon. And as you would have seen on the passenger side, I haven't got the shock fitted, so this will be a bit bouncy, although it is actually still quite stiff because it's got the uprated single leaf springs on it. But yeah, this side, way more how it should be. Now I've got to say that now this thing's slammed at the rear, I really do think this wing looks way better. I know this isn't everyone's cup of tea at all, and it always looks a bit more silly through the camera than it does in real life. But that's fine, you know, the car is supposed to look silly. That's why I've decided to bolt these silly bits on, like the rear wing. However, as I've mentioned, this one won't be staying. I've got a crazier one that Garry Ball has produced for me. I just need to go to Gary's place to pick it up. I will leave his links in the description for any of you guys that need any fiberglass or carbon bits for your car. But yeah, to be continued with that rear shock. I'll order another pair of those bushes. I'm pretty sure this one is okay. And yeah, I'll just try and open up that sleeve in the middle before I try and attempt to fit it next time. I don't know why it doesn't go on. I mean, there's 0.3 of a millimeter difference between the size of the stud on the base plate and the hole in those bushes. So I don't know whether 0.3 of a millimeter isn't enough of a difference. But yeah, I'll just open it up like I did with the driver's side one today, and yeah, should be able to get the other rear shock on. Yeah, I was hoping to fit this fuel pipe today as well, but I need to drill the chassis and rivet these clips on. So yeah, I didn't think I'd have enough time to do that, but plenty of time to do that. I can do that after I fit the engine or whatever. But yeah, really happy that I have made progress on Heidi's rear end, and yeah, really cool to see her slammed by 3 inches at the back. Now, as I say, I am going to run out of time soon, but there's a couple of bits I want to remove from Heidi's interior, mainly the dash top and the clocks, because I'm going to be selling them, because I'm going to be fitting the flopped dash and Maud's black clocks to this thing. So yeah, I want to get them off and get them on eBay, but I also want to switch out this restored pedal box, which is a bit dusty, because I'm going to be selling that, and then I can throw this pedal box on, which is now going to be Heidi's. So yeah, going to dive into cracking on with them bits. Hopefully I manage to get them done before it goes dark, but we'll see.
Before I could remove Heidi's pedal box, I needed to unbolt the master cylinder. I used some welding wire to stop it falling down, and then unbolted it and the pedal box, and then pulled the pedal box out. This will be going on eBay with some brand new pedal rubbers. In went the other pedal box, and once I'd bolted everything up and removed the welding wire, I connected the master cylinder to the brake pedal with the correct pin and clip. Then I drilled a hole here in the bracket in the car to hook up the return spring for the throttle pedal. Then I put a split pin on the throttle pedal shaft, which originally would have been an R-clip. I got the dash top and the clocks removed from Heidi without too much trouble. And then one final job of the day was to remove this bracket from this clutch pedal, which is from the next pedal box that I'm going to be refurbishing.
Alright, so there it is. A bit more progress has been made on Heidi. As usual, it hasn't come without its hiccups, and I still need to dot the I's and cross the T's before I can actually finish putting her rear end together. But progress is progress, and I'm moving slowly but surely towards that light at the end of the tunnel, where one day, at some point in the future, I'll be able to get out in Heidi and have some fun. Now, in other news, some of you guys may have seen on my social media and that sort of thing that the body shell from my other model, Mk2 Escort, has now sold on eBay. I have revealed who's bought it on my Patreon, because the guy happens to be a Patreon, and this guy knows Maud's body shell more than most. That's all I'm going to say for now, but I will reveal the new owner in an upcoming video. Hopefully we'll be able to hear his thoughts about what he's going to be doing with the car moving forward, but I'm pretty certain that we will be able to find out exactly what is going to be happening to Maud when he starts cracking on with it. But yeah, elsewhere in my life, I'm still waiting for my zinc platers to get back to me with the batch of bits that he's already got, and then I've got another batch to give to him. And in other news, we actually went to Silverstone recently for a very important meeting, you could say, and you'll hear all about that in probably the next video. But for now, I am going to end this video here. Massive thanks, as always, to everyone who's tuned in. Do give the video a thumbs up if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Check the links in the description to follow me elsewhere on the internet. My email address is down there for anyone who wants to contact me. Huge thanks, as always, to my patrons for your ongoing support. Feel free to check out my website and the Petrolhead Style website. A link to both of those will be in the description as usual. But other than that, until next time, thanks for watching.